Thank you very much indeed for coming to High Wycombe Paranormal Group. It's a very small group tonight, and I think that's probably the weather. No one wants to come out in the freezing cold. Thank you to those that have managed to come, like Sue. She did it with the help of Mena's mum, giving her directions. So thank you to Margaret, Mena's mum there. For all those that know about the group, I won't explain what it's about, but for those that are watching on the internet, this is High Wycombe Paranormal Meetup Group. We meet once a month, usually at the end of the month on a Wednesday, in Downley in High Wycombe at the Bricklayers Arms. And we try to have speakers talking on esoterical, magical, or paranormal subjects. And it's once a month, so please check us out on Facebook, High Wycombe Paranormal Meetup Group. And tonight we're very privileged to have Michael Feeley, a former policeman who's come all the way from Tamworth down the M40, so that's just north of Birmingham, for those that don't know. And he spent, how many years? 17 years?
17 years,
as a policeman. We interviewed him a few weeks ago for the Paranormal Peep Show, which you can listen to online. I'll post that later. And he's going to be talking tonight on esoterical secret codes and things. That's right?
Towards the middle and the end. Yeah.
Yep. So he's going to talk all about that and maybe a little bit of his history as a policeman and things like that. And we're going to do it in 2 sections, 40 minutes, and then we'll take a break and we'll do a second round of 40 minutes, then we'll do the collection at the end and maybe we'll questions and answers if there's time. So I'll say, give him a warm welcome and thank you very much to Michael.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for coming. As Neil was saying, the first part of the talk will be a little introduction into me, some of the paranormal things that I've experienced, and then we'll move on to some of the esoteric stuff, the Bible codes, the Egyptian pyramids, Stonehenge, the Sumerian Scrolls, etc., and how that connects to the Cydonian City on planet Mars. We'll get about halfway through, and just before we get to the Egyptian section, we'll have a break, and then when we come back after the break, we'll go back to ancient Egypt and start talking about the pyramids and what they're really there for. So, as Neil also said, this is how it started for me, and it was in 1992, after many applications, and this was my home for 18 weeks for residential training, and that's Hendon in North London. It's one of it is the hardest police college in the UK, and it has a 35% failure. So there were weekly exams, and it was a 70% pass mark. And if you failed 3 in that 4.5 months, it was bye-bye, good night. There were also morning inspections, 6:30 in the morning sometimes, standing on parade. And if just one person failed that inspection, the whole of the intake would be punished. So people who had actually left the military to join the police thought they'd actually still join the military because it was such a military sort of regime for them. After that 18.5 weeks and the passing out parade, I was put in North London to be a frontline police officer in North London. But because of the cost of living, etc., I couldn't actually afford to buy my own house or anything, so I transferred back to my home force, which was the West Midlands, and I was put into Birmingham, inner city Birmingham. I became quite disillusioned, probably about 12 months before the end of my career, which was in 2009, because I was seeing manipulated crime figures, where figures would be deliberately manipulated to fool the public. There'd also be manipulated stop and search figures, where we'd be told by senior officers to go and stop searching certain people who they knew wouldn't be carrying anything because it reflects well on stop and search. And there were also sort of manipulated response times as well. So when somebody calls 999 in an emergency, officers have 10 minutes to get to your house from the time of the call. If that 10 minutes wasn't met, then they would just reclassify that as what's called an early response, giving us 30 minutes to get there. So they would always meet their targets by manipulation. And that was causing lots and lots of disillusion. But the one thing that it did do for me is actually met my wife, who was also a police officer. We left at the same time, but we met when we were on the same shift, and we worked together in the riot vans in the inner city riots of a couple of years ago. But it was 2009, and with the disillusionment, it was time to say goodbye. But it wasn't just disillusionment. It was also lots and lots of paranormal activity that I'm going to go into in a moment that also caused me to leave my career. What the police did do for me is it made me into a trained investigator. It made me classed as an expert witness in court. So I'm able to spot evidence and actually piece evidence together, which has put me in good stead for what I do now. So that was the pinnacle year, 2009, which I call my awakening. But I'm now going to take you back to Victorian England, which is where my awakening started. In the year 1850, there was a young 14-year-old teenager who was murdered by her stepfather. And through the help of a medium, she actually asked myself and my wife to investigate her death because it was covered up and she had unfinished business. She wanted us to actually look into it for her. We tried to, but we didn't actually have a time or a date at that particular time. So we went to Birmingham Library and had a look at every death under this girl's name, but we couldn't find anything because we'd only gone back to the Second World War. We didn't have any time. It turned out it was actually in 1850. And on the 9th of February 2009, myself and my wife actually relived her murder, and she showed us in graphic detail her last moments of life where she was suffocated by her stepfather. Her stepfather had also been a spirit attachment with us as well, and he'd been smashing windows and possessing my body and doing all kinds of different things to try and stop us from helping this young girl. So it caused us about 6 months of trauma, and I couldn't actually go to bed without the light off for about 6 months after that because it was really, it scared me. From that point on, I began to see lots and lots of UFOs, both day and at night. One time at work as well was also possibly involved in a UFO landing where there was lots and lots of activity. There were underground explosions going on. There were members of the public calling us, saying there were figures and silhouettes in their garden, and there weren't because we were standing there. There's no one there, but they were adamant they could see intruders in their garden. We'd see what appeared to be shooting stars, but they were actually flying in tandem, so they weren't shooting stars. And the whole evening felt like we weren't in control. There was something really alien, really going on that we weren't in control of all that. So we spoke to a local UFO group as soon as we got back home at about 7:30 in the morning. And at that precise moment, as I was speaking to them and emailing them, all my emails were stolen, taken from the computer, seemingly copied and then put back. My phone was tapped, making certain calls. There'd be certain buzzwords that would activate some kind of tapping noise. And we had a phone engineer come out who found an anomaly in the telephone service box outside of our house that he couldn't understand what it was. So we believe it was GCHQ that were actually sort of monitoring us. One bright afternoon in my hometown of Tamworth, above the Snowdome, myself and my wife actually saw 3 massive cigar-shaped craft just silently hovering in the sky in the middle of the day. They were about 500 feet in the air, but we were the only ones that could seemingly see them. Again, probably about a year ago, whilst in Birmingham, I just happened to have this gentleman, or not a gentleman, he's not from this world, walk past me and stand 2 or 3 feet in front of me. He was about 6'3" tall. He got a long grey coat. He got long grey hair that almost looks as if it was about 100 years old. It was really fine and grey, and his energy field made my inside spin like a washing machine. He looked as if his skin had actually been stretched over the contours of his face. He was not from this world. He was strange, and this is sort of an artistic impression of what we saw that day. Again, in a local park, this is a photograph. That's a friend of ours. We could feel lots and lots of activity around us, and we took pictures, and this is what came back. Lots and lots of orbs, lots of activity around us. This one, I could actually walking through the same park, and I felt something, a presence join me on my right hand shoulder, and I said to a friend, take a photograph because there's something here. And this is the photograph that came back, and if you can see the little white looking feather thing, that is what is known as an extraterrestrial rod, that science doesn't understand what it is. No one seems to know what it is, but they've been recorded of travelling over 6,000 miles an hour, and this is what actually joined. I could actually feel that actually join my right shoulder. Again, I call this my Rendlesham forest, because in dense forestry, it was pitch black. Couldn't see anything. You couldn't even see from where I am to the end of the table. And all of a sudden, this, to the naked eye, it was just a pure white light, but it was so bright you couldn't actually look into it. It was too bright to look into. And it appeared in the trees from the ground from about 20, 30 feet in the air and about the same width in the trees. It was completely silent, but the wife's camera actually took a picture itself, and this is what came back. We couldn't actually, with the naked eye, we couldn't see all the purples and the pinks, we could just see the bright white light. But I say that we call this our Rendlesham forest. This one, for whoever's seen the 80s movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, this was our Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We were invited, or telepathically invited, all four of us, myself, my wife and two friends, to attend this location, which is in Church Stretton in Shropshire. And there's 4 monoliths, and there just happened to be 4 of us. The evening before, I was shown mental images of what would be happening, what would be seen, and I could see in my mind lots and lots of orbs coming all over the hill towards these monuments. When we look back at the photograph, that's exactly what was happening. All the orbs were coming over the hill towards us. We were telepathically told to stand at each monument, and we were told at the same time that we needed to walk anti-clockwise, almost like a baseball circuit. So we'd move from one to the next until we'd gone back to where we started. So we felt as if we'd sort of locked some kind of gateway for something to happen. I've even seen funnel-shaped grids coming from the moon, and also I've looked up at clouds that have turned into numbers and then returned back to clouds again. So there was some kind of digital program or something going on in the sky. I've even heard what the Native American Indians used to call voices of the wind, which is sort of elemental voices that you can hear as the wind passes your ears, and I've also heard them as well. I've also had lots and lots of experiences with what some people would call angels, which to me are actually electromagnetic forces, and their wings are actually helical waves, which give the appearance of wings. So they're actually electromagnetism, which is duality merged as balanced. And then in 2009, there was another twist. In the mind's eye, I kept being shown a golden key, and I couldn't exactly understand what the golden key was or what it meant. It turns out it's the Gnostic key of knowledge, or the worthiness to receive Gnostic knowledge. And Gnostic is sort of secret knowledge, just means to know, or it's knowledge of the divine. I also keep seeing the number 22, even up until today. And that again is the Gnostic number of secret knowledge. I'm also a descendant of Irish Celtic kings, and it's a bloodline that was traced, sort of my family name, goes all the way back to the kings of Ireland. So this is what it's really all about. It's the hidden secret knowledge of the Gnostics, and this has basically been given to me in the last 12-15 months, where lots and lots of ancient codes and lots of ancient secrets have all come in order for me to piece together this big picture. So I'm going to take you into a real Da Vinci Code. If anyone has ever seen that movie where Tom Hanks plays Robert Langdon, and he sort of sees all the symbology and goes to the Vatican and works all this thing out, this is exactly what it's all about. The world is run by these codes. And I shall go into the Bible in a moment, the esoteric Bible, the real translation. But it tells us that every eye shall see him. It doesn't necessarily mean the physical eyes. It means the pineal gland, the third eye, the single eye. And it also tells us, in Gnostic terms, that only those with the eyes that can see and the ears that can hear will come into this knowledge. You see Simon carrying the cross of Christ. Simon in Hebrew comes from Shimon, which means to hear. So again, esoterically, they are telling us about the eyes and the ears. And as I say, the world is full of secret codes, secret languages, and people see at least 1,000 symbols per day each. But no one ever seems to understand what they're on about because it's a secret language. Even inside the English alphabet, the Gnostics have hidden secret knowledge. We have God, which is Aleph, and we have Beth, which means house or mind, the mind of God. And the QRST is the Christ, the Christ, the sleeping Christ within. So even in the English language, there are symbols and hidden meanings. Every time I used to walk past a church, and incidentally this is the church that I actually got married in, it spoke a different language to me. People would be in there praying and worshipping, but it spoke a different language to me. There was some kind of hidden secret language. And the stained glass windows were telling me something else, and the architecture of the church was telling me something completely different to what even the priests were understanding. Religion is primarily, in astronomical terms, astrotheology, which is the worship of the planets. And each religion, each of the major religions, worship a different planet or a combination of the 7 visible planets. But what I'm going to talk about tonight in relation to the Bible is a blueprint, which is actually genetics, the gene of Isis, the Genesis, the beginning. And some of the ancient cultures, like the Egyptians, knew more about DNA and the sacred information stored within DNA than even scientists with all this technical equipment actually understand today. So it begs the question, how did they know? And Albert Einstein said that all religions, arts and sciences are branches of the same tree. If you imagine that the bark of the tree is the Gnostic truth and all the different individual branches are the illusion, they are the distraction, they are all the major religions of the world. As of 2014, there were 4,200 religions, and each of them were telling you that they are correct. So some of them are going to be quite disappointed. Even in Islam, this is symbolic. The hijab is symbolic of cutting the female off from the divine, cutting down their crown chakra. Hijab means a partition or barrier. Even when we go to terrorism and we talk about the 72 virgins of Islam, it's this is what it is. The pentagram inside the pentacle, each of the points of that star hits the pentacle at 72 degrees. Virgin comes from Virgo, which means virgin, and the sub-ruler of Virgo is Venus, which ranks quite highly in Islam. So we have the 72 Virgos, we have the 72 virgins, which is the 72 degrees of that pentacle. And now we'll get into the most widely read book in the world, the Bible. There's a word that's going to come up quite a lot in this talk, and that is consciousness, because consciousness is really the ancient code that I've deciphered in all of these ancient cultures. So conscious is basically to be aware, or to be aware of being aware. And when we go into enlightened consciousness later, that is again sort of a more advanced consciousness. So let's start with the Bible. So the first words of the Bible are, in the beginning was the Word. So again, keeping in the theme of genetics, it is all about genetics. It's telling us all about the genes of the body, which is the internal universe. Inside the body, we have 4 nucleotides, which are the adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. They have 64 combinations. In gematria, which means the numerical value of words and letters, the number 64 is God. Therefore, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. It is talking about genetics, it is talking about DNA. And for those who have read the 64 Keys of Enoch, that's exactly what the 64 is referred into. And then we get on to the Adam and Eve story. Adam is basically the organic atom inside the body, and the Garden of Eden is in the body, and the word Eden means life. An apple, as in this story, basically means an allegory, which is a story with a hidden meaning. And then we get into the serpent and the knowledge. It's all happening inside us. The serpent is Kundalini awakening that activates the third eye, which gives us Christ consciousness, which gives us enlightened consciousness. And the forbidden fruit is the knowledge of the pineal gland. Forbidden means to deny access to a place, and what they're trying to do is deny us access to our own knowledge. So the words Eden, the words Eve, and the word body, all of them mean the same thing. They mean life. It is talking about the human genetics and human life. And again, genetics, how everything is a micro and macro. The atoms of there actually surround the nucleus exactly the same way as the planets circle the solar sun, is basically a micro and macro inside us. So the Garden of Eden, we're told, and people have actually looked for the actual physical Garden of Eden, we're told that it can be located by the 4 rivers. The 4 rivers, again, are inside the human body. We have the Hiddekel, Tigris, which is the blood system. We have the Pishon, which is the urine system. We have the Gihon, which is the intestinal tract. And we have the Euphrates, which is basically the nervous fluid. So the Garden of Eden, that is talking about the 4 rivers of the human body inside the body. And then when we get to Eve, where Eve was created from the rib of Adam, what that's actually talking about is ionic bonding, and that is splitting the atom, where we extract electrons from one atom to create new life. So that gives us Eve. Extracting from the atom gives us the Eve. It gives us this. It gives us the electron. Eve was actually seen as a negative influence on Adam, and this is the reason, because the electron gives a negative charge. So the Eve is a negative influence because the electron is a negative charge. And then we move on to another of the famous stories, which is Moses. And again, this is all about genetics. Inside the human body, we have what is called a fluid mosaic membrane, which is a protective water cell, membrane around the cell. And Moses means drawn from the water. The word mosaic also means Moses. When we talk about the death of the firstborn in the Egyptian plagues, again, it's all the Egyptian plagues are happening inside us. So we have inside us what's called the proton, which is proto, which means the first. And that is carried around in the blood. It means it's born. So there we have the firstborn. And in relation to the death, when a cell is in trouble, when it's dying, it gives off a red dye called a mitogenetic red that enables other cells around it to understand that this cell is in difficulty and to avoid it. That is the red dye that was put over some of the households in the Plagues of Egypt story. It's talking about genetics, it's talking about mitogenetic reds, which is DNA. When Moses went to Mount Sinai, Sinai has several different meanings. The one in the Bible means Harbeshen, which means with the teeth. And what that's telling us is Moses was actually devouring or nourishing the celestial knowledge, which is the knowledge of body and soul. And this is the story of Moses at the burning bush. The burning bush is the pineal gland that is ignited by the Kundalini fire. So that is the burning bush of Moses. In modern day computer terms, that's exactly what that is telling us. The fox in spiritual animal meanings basically means spiritual awareness. And Mozilla, again, means mosaic, means Moses. That is the burning bush. That is the Kundalini energy awakening the third eye within the human brain. And here's the 10 Commandments. The 2 tablets are the left and right hemisphere of the brain, which is the corroboration between the spirit and material realm. So when Moses parted the Red Sea, that is actually called the cross translation, which is the easy sea, and that is taking us from the inner consciousness, which is the human mind, and it's taken us to the outer consciousness, which is the higher consciousness. And that is the meaning of Exodus in Greek means the road out. We are leaving inner consciousness to connect to outer consciousness. So a membrane is this. It actually parts and allows certain things to enter, and it closes to prevent certain things from entering if it doesn't want them to enter. In the story of Moses, the Red Sea parted, they went through, and then the Egyptian army followed them, and it closed in on the Egyptian army. That is on about the membrane of human genetics. It's a protective barrier that will stop certain things coming in and will allow the entry and exit of other things. And when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, you can see that everybody was carving the bull. That basically, in medical astrology, the bull is Taurus, which is the lower mind. That is symbolic that everybody is operating in the lower mind, whereas Moses, because of the knowledge of God, was operating in the higher mind. And when he went 40 years in the wilderness, even Israeli archaeologists are now saying that after 70 years of excavation, not one strand of physical evidence has ever been found in relation to a physical exodus and the 40 years in the wilderness. But what number 40 means is it has the power to lift a spiritual state. And that's exactly why number 40 was used. So in the Noah story, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. In the Moses story, they were in the wilderness for 40 years. It is the number 40 in numerology that is really the symbology. So inside the body again, we have cells that are called Phyla Code, and they deal with human photosynthesis, which is taking energy from the sun and chemically converging it into energy inside the body. Manna bread, which is what Moses was allegedly feeding the Israelites, manna comes from the word prana, and prana is again energy from the sun. It is human photosynthesis. So what the story is really telling us is about the energy from the sun being converted into energy in the body. Even the King Arthur story is telling us the same. It is telling us that only the chosen can receive the knowledge. The sword is symbolic of impenetrable knowledge. The stone is the foundation stone, which is known as the pineal gland. So only the chosen can extract knowledge from the pineal gland. It is all part of the brotherhoods. So the sword comes from Excalus Libertarius, Excalibur, and that means liberated from the stone. So only the chosen initiates will ever know or come into this knowledge. So King Arthur himself, the word Arthur comes from Artus, which means great bear, and it's talking about Ursa Major. And the spiritual meaning of the bear is the innermost thoughts, which is consciousness. If you see the back of the bear, you will see the plough, and the last three stars on the plough are called the Wizard March. That is Merlin. So King Arthur is the great bear, and Merlin is part of that constellation. The round table, when we have the Big Dipper, which is the plough, it circles the North Star Polaris. That is the original swastika. It's actually astronomy, and that is the round table where the Big Dipper actually goes around Polaris. Even Walt Disney is telling us about the consciousness. Elsa means she knows, which is knowledge, and the North Mountain is the pineal gland, which is known as the North Gate. Walt Disney, the name Disney comes from the insignia. They are an Illuminati bloodline from the French Merovingians. So now again we move on to another biblical story, which is the story of Noah. And basically the word Noah means comfort, and that is exactly what a child gets inside the amniotic sac of its mother during pregnancy. That is Noah's Ark. The Ark, when you change the word Ark from ARC to ARK, the K is an electrical relay system. That is Noah's Ark. It is the electrical relay system of the human body. The nucleotides I spoke about initially during the word actually exist in pairs, in base pairs. Some genealogists call them the Noah's Ark of chromosomes because they exist 2 by 2. That is the 2 by 2 story of the animals that went into Noah's Ark. And now the greatest story ever told, and it's called that because it's a story. Some people get really, really uncomfortable at this point because it goes against hundreds and thousands of years of false teachings. But there are two Jesuses, as you will see, and Jesus was born in the age of Pisces, which was the age of deception, and that is for good reason. And what people tend not to think about is by worshipping Jesus, they're actually breaching the first commandment of God. When we look at some publicly documented statements, we have Pope Leo X that said it has served us well, this myth of Christ. At the end of 2017 at a Catholic Mass, we had Pope Francis saying Jesus is metaphorical, not literal. So the heads of these religions that are followed by billions of people are actually telling us. So the heavenly Christ is the solar sun, and the Hebrews call that Shamash, which means servant, because Jesus was a servant of God. The 12 heavenly disciples are the 12 signs of the zodiac that tell the story of the solar sun, of the heavenly Christ. When we look at the nativity play, and again in astronomy, these are the three wise men following the star of Bethlehem. Above that, in the sky, you have the constellation of Cancer, which houses the manger, and also Asalus, which means donkey. So we have the donkey, the manger, the three wise men, and Sirius A, which is the star of Bethlehem. In Egypt, that is also Horus, Isis, and Osiris. But I shall go into Egypt after the break. Even the New Age is not unsusceptible to these fraudulent teachings. In the New Age, they call Jesus Sananda because they tell you that's his cosmic name. But in Sanskrit, Sananda means an aspect of Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is the female aspect of the sun. So Jesus was on the cross, the southern cross, between the two thieves. The two thieves in astronomy is the winter and the summer solstice. The bad thief is the winter solstice because it takes the sun away, and the good thief is the summer solstice because it gives us the sun, it gives us the summer. So they are the good and the bad thieves. All of the disciples were given personalities based upon their zodiac signs. So everybody who's ever had a natal chart read or anything like that, you understand that your personality is really, really sort of defined by what star sign you were born under, etc. And all of these disciples, each of their zodiac signs gives them their personality in biblical terms. So again, in astronomy, why have we chosen the 25th of December as our Christmas Day? Because on the 22nd, 23rd and 24th of December, the sun stands still in the same degree of sky. It is dead for 3 days. On the 25th of December, the sun moves 1 degree north to continue its annual transit. The sun is born on the 25th of December. So it stands to reason when you look at the Roman society and the Emperor Constantine, that really had an influence on the belief system of Christianity. And they were all into sexual orgies and public orgies. So it stands to reason that there's some kinds of fertility in Christ, in the Christ story, and there is. And this is the internal Christ. I've just dealt with the heavenly Christ, which is post-resurrection. This is now the earthly Christ, which is all to do with the human body. So the Bible tells us that Jesus started his Father's work age 12. That is because round about puberty in males, which is around age 12, that is a virgin birth. That is the Christ seed, the Christos seed. And Christos means anointed. The earthly Jesus is male sperm, which is anointed by semen, which is oiled by semen. The word sperm means seed. It is the Christos seed. The word saviour means he who sows the seed. So there's lots and lots of references to seed. Now this seed is born in the solar plexus, which is called Bethlehem, which means house of bread. So again, we have bread and seed. This is the solar plexus, this is Bethlehem. Inside the human solar plexus, which is a chakra, there is a thimble-sized depression called the fish and the manger. So therefore, we have the Christ seed born in a manger in Bethlehem, inside our solar plexus. And this is the biblical sort of pictures that we all see, and this is the Christ seed in the manger. Either side of the manger, we have Mary and Joseph, who sit either side of the manger. So Mary means water, is the Ida. We have the Ida and the Pingala nerves. The Pingala nerve is Joseph, but Ida is the lunar nerve, which is the moon. It deals with water, it deals with Mary, it is the moon, it is the lunar nerve. The word Joseph means God will add the seed. So again, we have that reference to seed. And all this is, of course, happening in Jerusalem, which comes from Solomon, who is the Canaanite sun god. So again, we have that solar sun connection. When we see certain arches at churches, we have that arch, which is the Roman sun arch, and the sun actually walks across the sky in 12 steps, which are the 12 hours of the day. That in movie terms is Luke Skywalker, Luke light, the light that walks across the sky, that is the sun. But we also have this kind of archway, which is the Lunette Arch, and lunette comes from luna. So basically the church is the moon, and the church is the moon because it reflects the light of the sun, it reflects the light of Christ. And the females, instead of the Christ seed, which is the solar seed, they possess the lunar seed. The female genitalia is known as the gate of heaven. And again, that's the moon. The church is the moon because it reflects the light of the sun. So the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail comes from Graal, which means a vessel of God. It is the womb. And the red wine that is symbolic in the chalice is the menstrual blood, and that turns consciousness into matter. And that is the chalice. And we have the transformation zone between the endocervix and the ectocervix. So when people actually drank the blood of the Grail, they were transformed spiritually. It is the transformation zone, which is part of the womb. And again, the menstrual blood, it transports us to our endocrine state. When we get to the Egyptian section, I'll start talking about the endocrine system. It's basically the master glands of the third eye, which are the pituitary, the thalamus, and the pineal gland. It is also called the fountain of life. When we go to church and we sing hymns, hymns comes from Hymen, and he was the Greek god of marriages. The word mother itself is a genetic term. It comes from mitochondria and other, which gives us the word mother, and it basically gives energy to the cells of the body. They are only retained by daughters, and it's called the mitochondrial Eve. So why was Jesus called the Lamb of God? Again, we look no further than genetics. Inside the body, we have what's called the laminin, which is the shape of a cross, and it holds tissues and muscles together. The abbreviation is LAMB3. It is the Lamb of God. This biblical statement basically says that for by him all things were created, and in him all things hold together. It is talking about the laminin, where we get the word laminate, which holds together. It is the Lamb of God inside us. So Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan. Jordan means to descend or to flow downwards. It's talking about the spinal fluids that the Christ seed actually goes into. And the word Yeshua means salvation, which comes from the word salt, salt. It's talking about bodily fluids that contain salt. So Jesus, the Christ seed, is our salvation. And John, the death of John the Baptist is talking about the death of the Old Testament to the New Testament. Testament means body and mind. We are making the transition from the old self to the new self, and that's what the death of John the Baptist was symbolic of. In relation to the journey of this Christ seed to Christ consciousness, there is a thing called sexual sublimation, which is celibacy, which is the retention of sexual energy. So when we retain this sexual energy, the body refines 10%, which is where we get the word tithing, and that uses that within cells. It's all to do with Kundalini awakening, and Kundalini is basically a white liquid fire, which is a chemical composition. It just so happens that the word chemical and chemistry comes from chem, which is a word for Egypt. And I've actually seen this, so it does actually exist, but it is, Kundalini is white, it is that white fire, it's that white liquid, and the white is the colour of balance. Some people have a very gradual Kundalini awakening, other people have a rapid increase, and it's the increase of bioenergy within the body. If it's gradual, it's quite pleasant. If it's rapid, it's quite disturbing. So this Kundalini energy takes a Christ seed and it goes up Jacob's ladder, which is the human spine. And as it goes up via the lower chakras, it destroys them. The lower chakras are known as Sodom and Gomorrah. So Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed by fire. The Christ seed then goes through what's known as the optic chasis, which means chamber of light. And the Greeks called it the crossing or the cross because it's shaped like a cross. And this Christ seed is crucified in the optic chasis. Crucified means to subdue one's appetite, which again goes back to celibacy and sexual sublimation. It's also the symbol of Osiris, that is the optic chasis, where the Christ seed is crucified. And that's also the position that mummies, Egyptian mummies, are actually buried. So all this happens, the Christ seed goes through the optic chasis, he's crucified on the cross, and this happens in the human head, which is the Golgotha, which is the place of skulls. And inside the skull, we have the 12 earthly disciples, which are the 12 cranial nerves of the human brain. It then goes into the cerebellum, which is a part of the brain, which again I'll deal with in the Egyptian section. But the cerebellum is the tomb, and it's in there for 3 days because it takes 3 days for the subconscious to cleanse before it will ascend to God. Hence the reason the Christ seed is in the tomb for 3 days. And again, when we see the word INRI above Jesus, INRI are the 4 elements in Latin. It is the tetragrammaton, it is the material, physical realm, which we must transcend in order to get to the ether, the 5th element. And the wounds of Christ tell us that as well. The wounds of Christ are symbolic of the pentagram, which is the number 5. And the number 5 means the realised man. Again, is that consciousness awakening. The inner degrees of the pentagram are 108 degrees. 108 in frequency terms, 108 hertz is the frequency of total knowing. So again, we're looking at consciousness and enlightened consciousness. And that is why we see many sort of logos with the funny shaped E. The letter E is always different to the other letters. And that is because E is the 5th letter of the alphabet, which then goes back to the number 5, which is realised man. So as this Christ surpasses this earthly Kundalini, it is symbolised by the crown of thorns, because thorns are nature, they are symbolic of earth. So the earthly Christ is about to transition into Christ consciousness. And he's then resurrected. Resurrection means to use again. So again, the body is using this sexual energy, sexual sublimation energy, and it's using it again inside the cells. So that the spine, Jacob's ladder, has 33 vertebrae. And just so happens that there are 33 degrees of Freemasonry. It also happens that 33 hertz is the frequency of Christ consciousness, and it's also the frequency that actually syncs sacred geometry, which is the G inside the Masonic symbol. The Bible tells us that Jesus died age 33. That is why Jesus died age 33. It is the hertz frequency of the Christ consciousness. And when we go to church and we see such symbols as this, the IHS, which is the symbol of Jesus, there are 32 rays, and the one in the middle makes 33. We are talking about 33, the hertz frequency of Christ consciousness. It's sacred geometry. The circle is the sacred shape, divine shape, and the line is the divine partition. When we look at geometry of divinity, we get the word God. And again, some more biblical quotes in Matthew 6:22. If your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light. Your eye, your third eye, your pineal gland. It's the Cyclopean ritual, the Cyclops, the single eye. And it says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. The thalamus, which is part of the 3 master glands of the third eye, is known as the Ru, the gateway. So in other words, you cannot get to the Father except through this cosmic Christ consciousness. Golgotha, the place of skulls, is also known as Jericho, which means city of the moon. And it's called the city of the moon because it encases the semi-lunar ganglion, and semi-lunar means crescent moon. So then we move to that fateful, the night before that fateful day, the Last Supper. The Last supper comes from soup, and that means to enhance. So we are enhancing the Christ consciousness. He's sitting at the table. The table comes from the word mensa, and mensa means mind. So the Christ is sitting at the mind with the 12 disciples, which are the 12 cranial nerves. And when it says drink my blood, that is symbolic of the union of matter and mind. It is the balance prior to Christ consciousness. Lord, the word Lord means giver of bread. So again, we're going back to seed and Bethlehem and house of bread. And he's telling us, give us this day our daily bread. He's basically saying that give us this Christ seed so that we may reach our Christ consciousness, that we may reach our full potential. And when we see the position of the prayer hands, that is balancing of the chakra system. And the ring finger, the index finger, is the third eye. Hence the reason that is the union of the marriage of opposites, the balance of opposites. But it's all to do with aiding Kundalini awakening, and that is balancing the chakras of the fingers. It's all about the ascension to that Christ consciousness within. It is the second coming of Christ. The first coming is the birth in Bethlehem, and the second coming is the transition to that Christ consciousness, which is a higher level of thought. And when we see religious festivals such as this one, it comes from that word, which again means pineal gland. It is the rapture of Christ. It is the transition from the earthly to the heavenly. And when the Bible talks of chariots appearing in the sky, in Old Hebrew, it is the Merkabah, which means chariot. And a Merkabah, in spiritual terms, is a vehicle to take us to that higher consciousness. So some of the miracles of Christ. This is the heavenly Jesus walking on water. That is the sun's reflection upon the waves. And the word Jesus comes from Osiris, which means son of Zeus. Zeus is the planet Jupiter, who is father of the skies. And this is the blood of Christ. So when we have sunrise or sunset, sometimes the sky becomes crimson red. That is where we get the term blood of Christ. And Jesus turning water into wine. Water is an information carrier that changes blood, and it reflects the character of consciousness. So that is Jesus turning water into wine. Red wine is symbolic of blood, as we can see in many Holy Communion celebrations. And water molecules, when they come close to freezing, they spin and join together in the shape of a tetrahedron, a pyramid shape. It basically, at that point, it develops consciousness, and the tetrahedron pyramid shape is actually the model of consciousness. The 5 loaves and 2 fishes, another miracle. The 5th sign of the zodiac, again, is Virgo, which is the house of bread, which is the 5 loaves, and we have the 2 fishes, which is Pisces. And the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is the human brain, the human mind, which is an electrical relay system that connects us from here to there, and it's gold, because gold is the colour of enlightenment. So the Bible tells us that the first person to witness the resurrection of Christ was Mary Magdalene. So who was Mary Magdalene? Mary Magdalene is the amygdala within inside the human brain, and the amygdala deals with many functions, including libido, which is sexual appetite. Hence the reason that Mary Magdalene is known as the prostitute in certain circles. We're all living in sin. In the geometry of the body, there are separations. The horizontal separation is called the transverse plane, which is the sign. And sign gives us an abbreviation of sin. We're all living in sin. We're all living in the lower chakras of earth, which is from the base all the way down to the feet, the lower chakras, the kingdom of earth. And another story of the Bible, Jonah and the whale. The whale, or Leviathan, is seen as spiritual darkness. It is a symbol of spiritual darkness. When Jonah was inside the belly of the whale, he was in spiritual darkness. When he left the belly of the whale, he came into spiritual light. He came into enlightenment. And again, another symbol inside churches. This is basically the Kundalini process. That is the Christ seed going through the optic chasism into the pineal gland, post-Christ consciousness. And even the Vatican, the pine cone, which gives us the word pineal, is telling us Vatican means Vatica, which means the third eye. The pineal gland gives a brown and white secretion. Secretion gives us the word secret. It is the big secret. That, in biblical terms, is the land of milk and honey. So I'm just going to move on now to a different culture, which is, anybody ever heard of the Anunnaki and the Sumerian Scrolls by Zecharia Sitchen? Well, I support the notion that human genetics was tinkered with about 35,000 years ago. It's quite obvious because it happened too fast for evolution. But I've seen a different translation inside the Sumerian Scrolls, and this is my translation of them. But again, I do stress that I do support the notion that we've been tinkered with. The principal, or two of the principal gods of this story are Enki and Enlil, who are the Shetai, the snake brothers. Their father, the chief god, is Anu, and Anu means atom. It's the ultimate atom of creation. He talks about Planet X, which is Nibiru, called the Wandering Planet. Well, in Egyptian astronomy, the planet Venus is known as Neb-Heru, which means House of Horus. So the word Neb-Heru and Nibiru is very close. The word Nibiru means wandering planet, and because Venus's orbit noticeably wanders, it is also known as the wandering planet. So Neb-Heru, Nibiru, is the planet Venus. It also operates at 482 Hertz, which is a frequency of consciousness. So on this picture, I can see that the part of the third eye system inside that picture, we have the wings, which are the two hemispheres, the lateral wings of the cerebellum. They are separated by what's known as the vermis, which means serpent. So we have the two wings of the cerebellum separated by the serpent. We also have this figure carrying a pine cone, which is the pineal gland, which is the consciousness. He's also carrying what appears to be a handbag, which to me is symbolic of secret knowledge that is handed to the worthy. So again, back to Enki and Enlil, the Shetai, the snake brothers. It is the double helix of human DNA that resemble the intertwining serpents. And Zecharia tells us that the scrolls say that the Anunnaki brought the moon to Earth. They also say that when they came to Earth, they found life here. Well, scientifically, that's impossible, because the Earth and the moon have the same isotopes, which are chemical elements. They are about the same age. So whoever created the Earth and put it there, created the moon at the same time and put it in the same aspects of sky. The moon keeps the Earth at a 23.5 degree tilt, which gives us the 4 seasons, and it gives us liquid as water. So without the moon, there is no life on Earth. So the Anunnaki could not have found life if they'd have brought the moon with them. It says that they came to Earth to search for gold. Gold is the colour of enlightenment. It is talking about the search for enlightenment. Again, the Greeks are telling us the exact same thing. If we do not honour our God self, our higher self, they will disappear. So our mortal self, earthly self, needs to acknowledge our God. Even Norse Odin, where Odin gave up an eye at the well in exchange for knowledge. It is talking about one eye, it is talking about the single eye, it's talking about the pineal gland. Even Santa Claus is talking about consciousness. So Santa Claus, Saint Colostrum, the Holy Colostrum, is what creates consciousness in the brain. And it takes the process going through the substantia nigra, which means black substance. That is symbolic of the coal of the chimney. That part of the brain also deals with reward, which is the promise of gifts, etc. at Christmas. So the whole of the Santa Claus is talking about the journey and the creation of consciousness within the brain. The The neurons of the brain are what are Santa's helpers. And reindeers represent a journey, and that journey is the internal journey to consciousness. Ground consciousness are the number, it is the number 8, hence the reason there are 8 reindeers, and ground consciousness is the basis that all other consciousness rises from. Even the pirate stories where X marks the spot, X is the optic chasism that marks where the Christ seed gets crucified. And when we're talking about pieces of 8, again, we are talking about the 8 stages of ground consciousness. Leonardo da Vinci, who was the master of sacred geometry, who used to put geometric shapes beneath the canvas of his paintings. The Vitruvian Man is talking about the 4 bodies of vibrational existence. We have the man, which is the physical body. We have the arms, which is the dynamic body of emotion. We have the square, which is confined in the mind. And we have the circle, which is the spiritual body. Hence, we are bringing the infinite into the finite. We are bringing the infinite, the forever, into this 3rd dimension. And the Mayans, even the Mayans, were telling us about that word again, consciousness. The 9 steps of their pyramids are the 9 stages of consciousness. So that word consciousness continues to come up now. Stonehenge is a circle, which is pi, but pi operates at 528 hertz, which again is a frequency of consciousness. And just to prove that I've actually been there, that is me in 2009. So Stonehenge is basically a concentric circle, which is a primary halo, and it's part of a Cyclopean ritual. Cyclops, Cyclopean, again means the one eye, pineal gland. Stonehenge is made up of partly Presley bluestones that have 7 bands of energy, and those 7 bands of energy connect to the 7 chakras and they balance them. So what the people of Stonehenge were doing, they were using Earth's energies, energy lines, Kundalini energy, to go through their balanced vessel and taking them into Christ consciousness, into enlightened consciousness through concentric circles. So at that point, we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm going to go into the pyramids and tell you all about why the pyramids are really there and the Sphinx and what the Egyptian gods mean.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Michael, for the first part. So we're resuming in about 20 minutes. So, welcome back, Michael, for part 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying. Some people leave at the Jesus section, but I appreciate you being hanging around. So we're now going to go back to ancient Egypt, and again, the word consciousness will come up quite a lot because the ancient code is consciousness, and all of these ancient cultures are telling us the same thing, which is the consciousness and how to raise ourselves to that ascension process. So the Egyptians, it's quite widely known that they worship the sun. They called Ra, but what is not widely known is they also worship the Amun Ra, and Amun means hidden, the hidden sun. It's the hidden light within us. Some of that hidden light are the biophotons, again, of the human body, and they hold the keys to the quality of life in all living beings. Biophotons are also responsible for the human auric field. And when someone says, you're now showing your true colours, or you feel a bit off colour today, the way we feel in the way we are affects the colour of our auric field. So now going into the pyramids in Egypt. The Great Pyramid is 449 foot tall. So again, it's quite a random number. Why not 450 feet or something else? Well, that is because 449 in nanometers is the wavelength of the produced biophotons. So again, we're looking at the light within. It is 449 nanometers. And those biophotons are produced within the neurons of the brain and give us the colour violet, which is the highest vibrational colour, hence ultraviolet, and the spiritual healing of the violet flame. It's all this high colour. It also gives them what's called quantum entanglement, which goes us back to genetics, and it's all about how atoms and genetics actually coincide with each other. So it gives us a consciousness connection, and the more light that we have, the more consciousness that we have. Hence the reason that we see many pictures such as Buddha and Jesus with this halo, with this light. It's basically telling us that they have this high rate of biophotons, they have this high inner light that is emanating out of their being. So again, as I like to prove that I've been to some of these sacred sites, this was in 2010. There was actually a twist. My wife and I was deciding where we wanted to go on holiday just before 2010, and we decided we were both having a strong pull towards Egypt. We knew we had to go to Egypt, but we also knew in our gut that it was more than just a holiday. It was going to be a working holiday. There was some reason that we were going there. And then just out of the blue, about a week before, we received an email from a psychic medium from Scotland. We didn't know her. We'd never spoken to her before. And she said that I have a message for you from my spiritual council. And she described her spiritual council as a hierarchy of archangels and different spiritual beings. And that message read, regarding your trip to Egypt, you need to look past the tourism, you need to learn about her, you need to understand her, and then you need to teach about her. And that was in 2010. It meant nothing to us at the time, it meant nothing to me at the time, but it confirmed the fact that I knew I was going to Egypt for greater reasons than just a holiday. Whilst writing The Secret of the Pyramids book, which again is 7 years later, and all this information's coming to me, one summer's evening last year, the end of last year, I was walking down a set of stairs, and I heard a whoosh sound, literally just a whoosh sound. And as I turned around to my left, I had an Egyptian pharaoh in full headdress walking alongside me. So he didn't say anything. I couldn't see who it was because he was in full headdress. But at the same time that I could see him to my left, I could also see him from the front, and I could also see me as if I was looking through his eyes. So I was actually got a multi-dimensional view of this Egyptian pharaoh who was walking alongside me. The word pharaoh comes from, it basically means great mind, great house, great mind. So again, this is where we're going with the pyramids and with the Egyptian philosophy. It's the great mind. It is the consciousness that I've been speaking about. And the Egyptians believed in knowledge, to know. So let's now go back to Egypt and let's find out what these sacred monuments are actually really telling us. So in order to become an initiate of the pyramids, in order to be or get your fair share of this knowledge, this sacred secret knowledge, you have to pass this guy. He is the guardian of sacred knowledge within the pyramids of Egypt. If you can pass the riddle of the Sphinx, if you can get past him, you then become an initiate of the pyramids. Sphinx in Egyptian means to combine, and this is the balance of opposites, which again, I'll go into in a moment, and how important the balance of equilibrium and the balancing of opposites is. The mainstream tells us that the pyramids were built by slaves, by Hebrew slaves. It's absolutely nonsensical. The pyramids were built with advanced technology. I personally think that the stones were lifted by frequencies, and I think that the stones were cut by frequency laser beams. And modern day scientists, especially in Switzerland, are now being able to levitate third dimensional objects with sound, and they're able to create laser beams with sound. A lot of this is done by F sharp, the chord F sharp, which is the tone that the priests used to sing and say prayers inside the pyramids. It was at F sharp. So when we see some of the chief gods of Egypt, which is Horus, Isis and Osiris, that is symbolic of the three master glands, the endocrine system of the human brain, which is Horus is the thalamus, Isis is the pituitary gland, and you have Osiris, which is the pineal gland. When we see the famous Egyptian Ankh, the Ankh, which is called the key of life, is actually what's called DNA protein synthesis. When a protein sees DNA, it will wrap it around, loop itself over, and it will tie its ends, and it gives us the shape of the Ankh. The key of life is talking about the duplication of genetics of DNA. And again, not only was I visited by a pharaoh, but I was actually sitting in the living room of my house, and I looked up and there was a blue scarab beetle manifesting out of the wall in my living room. At the same time, I looked down at my feet and I could actually see a white serpent of light scurrying away from my left foot, which I've now found out was that liquid fire, that Kundalini energy. The Egyptians, as much as the biblical texts, as much as the Anunnaki Scrolls, As much as Stonehenge were telling us, the Egyptians are telling us about the journey of enlightenment. When we look at the famous Egyptian Eye of Horus, that is symbolic of the pineal gland. Yet again, it is all about the head and the pineal gland and consciousness. The god Osiris. Osiris means throne of the eye, and the eye it's talking about is the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is the seat of the soul. That is why when we see pictures of Osiris sitting on a throne, judging the dead in the underworld, Osiris is the judge of the soul, and that is what that picture is, that hieroglyph is telling us. In relation to the eyeliner, a lot of people have surmised that it was all medicinal purposes and it was releasing certain chemicals for health. It is not, it is symbolic of Osiris, and Osiris's colour, because he's involved with the underworld, he was associated with the colour black, hence the reason the Egyptians used to have these face paintings around the eye. And Osiris was also known as the god of the staircase. That staircase are the vertebrae of Jacob's ladder of the spine, which then takes us to the consciousness system of the brain. So on a world map, when we look at all the cardinal points, it gives us the location smack bang in the middle. It tells us where Giza is, which is the centre of the world's land mass. But just memorise that shape, because we also see it elsewhere. And this is where we get the shape of the Union Jack. The colour blue is royalty, the colour red is Lower Egypt, and the colour white is Upper Egypt, is the amalgamation of the two lands. It is the amalgamation of the opposites. So the pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid, faces due north, and again nobody seems to know why the Great Pyramid faces north. It faces north because the pineal gland is the north gate. That is why the Great Pyramid faces north. The four cardinal points, we have north, which is wisdom and logic. We have the east, which is illumination, enlightenment. We have the south, which is emotion, and we have west, which is all to do with inspection, which is it's all to do with the mental processes. Hence the reason the pyramids are locked into the cardinal points. Mummies and the Sphinx faced east, because east in cardinal points was all to do with illumination and enlightenment, and the Sphinx is the guardian of enlightenment, is the guardian of this sacred knowledge, hence the reason it is facing east. So when we look at King Tutankhamun, his death mask, and I've actually seen this at the Museum of Cairo, and Tutankhamun's death mask is again telling us of a consciousness system. The Egyptians had a quadrant system of consciousness. It had four parts. The three master glands I've just mentioned, but it also has the cerebellum, which deals with equilibrium, which deals with balance. And the cobra headdress is symbolic of the cerebellum. And the back you can see the brainstem. And again, the serpent in the middle, the vermis, which separates the lateral wings of the cerebellum. That is King Tutankhamun's death mask. The two snakes are the goddesses Nekhbet and Wadjet, who were the goddesses of Upper and Lower Egypt. And what that is telling us is the pharaoh, who was king of the two lands, is balancing the two lands. It is balancing the opposite. It is equilibrium. When we look at pictures such as this, where you got Teote on a boat with a monkey, it probably just looks like a fancy art picture to the untrained eye. But what this is telling us is about ground neurons, which is all to do with thought. And the word Teote comes from, gives us the word thought. So what that is telling us is thought is travelling through neurohormones, through the cerebrospinal fluid of the body, and it's a messenger system. The monkey is the olfactory tract, and this is how. The first two pictures on the left are the olfactory tract inside the human brain. The one on the right is the Egyptian pictorial depiction of the olfactory tract. Hence the reason we just saw the monkey next to the fort. It's all to do with olfactory consciousness. So that is what the Egyptians are telling us about the signal, the chemical signal from the brain to the body. So why the pyramid shape? Well, the pyramid shape, the tetrahedron, is the model of consciousness. And water molecules are tetrahedron. The element of fire symbol is a tetrahedron. And the word pyramid means fire in the middle. The pyramid comes from the pyramidal neurons, which fire in the middle. They are electrical chemical signals. It's also the pyramidal neurons also deal with advanced cognitive functions, which is all to do with knowledge. The Sphinx was once underwater, and they're now finding water erosion beneath the Sphinx that's at least 10,000 years old. So it's at least double what we're being told in the mainstream. So the Nile, the River Nile, which was once surrounding the pyramids and the Sphinx, is representative of the cerebrospinal fluid. So when we look at the chakra system of the land, because the human body has a chakra system, but so does land, and when we look at the prime meridian of Africa, we can see that Giza, ironically, is situated on the third eye. We can see that Alexandra is situated on the crown chakra, hence the reason Giza and Alexander. Giza is all to do with consciousness and the third eye. It's our own personal pyramid. As I say, the tetrahedron is the model of consciousness. So if you do a tetrahedron on the head, the point of the pyramid, just below the point of the pyramid is where we find the third eye. And this is something that not many people know. When we put a map overlay of a human head over the pyramid, facing north, because the pineal gland is the north gate, you will see that where the king's chamber is situated is exactly where the pineal gland is situated. Where the queen's chamber is situated is where we find the pituitary gland. And we have the thalamus, which is Horus, which is connected to the sun. So the thalamus, Horus, this is the god Horus, he's all connected to the solar sun. So we have the three main Egyptian gods inside the brain. The area between the pineal and pituitary gland is known as the Crystal Palace. So if there's any London football fans here, that is where it gets its name from. It is the part between those two master glands. The king's chamber of the Great Pyramid has a frequency of 8 hertz. And 8 hertz is also the frequency of Earth and the alpha waves of the human brain. It's also an altered state of consciousness. The bridges and the galleries within the pyramids are the pons of the brain. Pons means the bridge. The pyramid, or the Great Pyramid in particular, is a giant replica of the human brain, or the endocrine system of the human brain. And again, here we see the ventricles and all the lobes of the brain. There are 4 of them. And here we see, at the moment, we see the 4 chambers of the pyramid. So again, in spiritual terms, it's all to do with the chakra system. Most in spiritual terms, there are 7 chakras, but the Egyptians, they had 9 chakras. They had in addition to all those, they had the carnal chakra, which is the skin, and the skin is the projection of inner truths. So it's an outward reflection of what's inside, is the skin. The nasal chakra is the olfactory consciousness, which is all to do with smell. When we see some Egyptian pictures, we will see what they call the Star of Bethlehem, which is a flower, which is like an aromatherapy that activated their third eye. And this is how the 9 chakra system appears. It's the Essenbach code. The horizontal section will be chakras 6, 7 and 8, which are the 3 elements of the third eye. So we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 will be the crown chakra. It gives us the shape of the cross. It is the Essenbach code. They believe that to attain this kind of consciousness, you needed to balance the opposites. You needed to bring duality into unity. And they use such things as the wands of Horus in order to do that. It's been proven that man or woman needs 2 environmental signals in order to balance the self. You have the yang from above and you have the yin from below. That is the yin and yang symbol. So this is the example of the wands of Horus. When we see statues where the Egyptians have their left foot forward, they are telling us that they exist under a matriarchal system of balance. If they had their right foot forward, they're telling you that they operate under a patriarchal male system. In this case, they have their sort of left leg forward. And this is what the wands of Horus would have looked like. They are symbolic of sun and moon, which are the opposites in the sky. And again, they believed at death we were balancing the two lands, the physical and the metaphysical. They called it the cemetery, we call it the cemetery. Now we're going to go into some advanced sound, advanced sonics. 432 hertz being one of them, which is called the God frequency, and that balances the third dimension and it connects us to a higher consciousness. And within the pyramids, there are lots of frequencies such as this. 432 hertz resonates with 8 hertz, and 8 hertz synchronizes the two hemispheres of the brain, giving us full capacity, full potential, and a full flow of information. 432 hertz is also hidden within the Star of David as a frequency. The Egyptians used to tune their instruments to 432 hertz. Nikola Tesla, who some claim to be the greatest scientist that ever lived, said, if you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6 and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. Just so happens that the Egyptians were given us the key to this universe. They had 3 sets of 3 pyramids that equal 9. It is the factor 9 of universal harmonics, because all of these frequencies are divisible by 9. We have 4 plus 3 plus 2 also equals 9. And then we see the 144,000 outer casing stones, limestone, which again is a frequency of consciousness. The hertz frequency of the third eye chakra system as a component part is 144 hertz. 144 is the secret key, and it's also the spiritual concept of light. And light in gematria, the numerical value of words, is 144. Again, on the summer solstice, there is an indentation in the Great Pyramid that gives us 8 sides. 8 sides, when you have multiple cycles of 8, it equals 1 432, one significant 432, which is a God frequency. But the 8 sides are the 8th consciousness, rising of all other levels of consciousness. It's also classified as the final awakening. So again, they are telling us of this Christ God consciousness. Those 8 ground things actually transform to what is known as the 5 wisdoms. So again, we're looking at number 5, which brings us back to the all-knowing, the final knowing, the realised man, the number 5. So pi, people think that all the mathematics within the pyramids are there just for numerical sense. All of the mathematics in the pyramids are there because they have consciousness frequencies. Pi is 528 hertz, the miracle tone, which raises consciousness to its full potential. Within pi, which is a transcendental number, which means it deals with the spiritual realm, it gives us quantum immortality. It also has encoded within the digits of pi, 3.14159, it tells us the coordinates of all our atomic structure and our genetic code. And when we look at quantum tunneling has actually proved time travel back and forth, where we can be many places at the same time, multidimensionally. So some more mathematics, the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. Both of those operate at a vibration of 432 hertz. The mainstream tell us that Leonardo da Pisa, also known as Fibonacci, discovered the Fibonacci sequence in the year 1202, but the Egyptians knew about it many thousands of years before that. At the Borobudur temple in Indonesia, there are 432 statues of Buddha. Again, that is referring to 432 hertz, the God frequency. And all Tibetan singing bowls are tuned to 432 hertz. This balancing of opposites, which they call the chemical marriage of king and queen, was known as tying the knot, which is something that we use in modern day weddings, which is the balance of king and queen, the amalgamation of male and female. So now we move on to the pyramid shafts. So why are certain shafts pointed towards certain star systems? Well, as you can see, Sirius A, which in astronomy is associated with the goddess Isis, is pointing towards the Queen's chamber. So the pituitary gland is known as the star chamber of Isis, which is why that chamber is pointing towards Sirius A. In relation to Orion, it directs us to the King's Chamber, which is Osiris. Osiris is associated with the constellation of Orion. He is the pineal gland. When we look over to the right, it goes up towards Draco, which is the modern day name for that constellation. In Egyptian times, it was called the Serpent or the Cobra. The Cobra is significant of the balancing of opposites. The lower end of the Cobra is feminine, and the top end of the Cobra is masculine. It's also symbolic of leaving the physical realm. The snake is symbolic of leaving that physical realm as it sheds its skin. They were telling us of transition from the physical to the metaphysical. And again, there we have Sirius A, which is the pituitary gland Isis, and Sirius B, in Egyptian mythology, it's Nepsis, who's the invisible sister. And again, just to confirm, it's locked into Orion because Orion is Osiris, which is the pineal gland. The cosmic appearance of the full moon was also associated with the goddess Isis as well, hence the reason for fertility cults and moon cults. So Leonardo da Vinci tells us this in his painting The Mona Lisa, which means Mona means moon, and Lisa comes from La Isa, which is Isis. The moon is Isis. And in the theme of fertility cults, this is the Egyptian Tayet, which was symbolic of menstrual blood, and because the female body is locked into the moon, Isis. And this is modern day symbology in celebritism. When we have the left eye exposed, that is the worship of the goddess Isis. When we have the right eye exposed, that is the god Horus. So it's Isis and Horus worship. And again, going back to Sirius A, the Masons worship the blazing star, which is Sirius A. Sirius means scorching, and it is known as the mother sun. It's believed to have created our sun. So Sirius is the mother sun, which gives us Marsun, Mason. And it's all about the symbolic phoenix from the flames, which is the pineal gland being awakened by Kundalini energy, the energy of fire. Body parts during mummification were put into what's called canopic jars. And that's because Canopus, which would have been the South Pole star for the Egyptians, has a star frequency of consciousness. There's some symbols in modern day society. We have Big Ben, which comes from the word Benbenet, which means pyramid capstone. What that's saying is, it is a big pyramid capstone. The River Isis was formerly known, so the River Thames was formerly known as Isis, and in parts of Oxfordshire it still is known as Isis. But originally, the Thames comes from the word Tamas, which means dark river, and it's shaped like Apophis, who is the serpent of darkness in Egypt. So therefore it is the dark river, the serpent of the Nile. This is the east end of London, Canary Wharf, where we can quite obviously see the pyramid on top of the building. Even old pubs, the Red Lion. The Red Lion are the pharaohs of Lower Egypt. Even George and the Dragon is the sun fighting with Apophis, the darkness, as the serpent of darkness fights the sun each evening. The sun disappears, goes into the underworld, and then he comes up victorious, Horus risen, the horizon, when the sun comes up in the morning. Even City of London police stations are set out to mimic the belt of Orion, the 3 stars of the belt of Orion. And when we look at the dollar sign, we can see that it opens out to Isis, which again is significant. And even the pyramid, talking about enlightenment, the top of the enlightenment, the top of the pyramid, is on the American dollar. So then we get to the Oval Office and the White House. The ancient capital of Egypt was Memphis, which means white walls, hence the reason that we have a White House in America. The Oval Office is to do with the pituitary gland and the womb. It's all to do with the goddess Isis, the goddess of motherhood. Washington DC, the obelisk is the penis of Osiris, male power, and the dome-shaped building is the womb, So therefore we have Osiris and Isis, who were brother and sister and husband and wife. Even the cenotaph, which is an obelisk, during Remembrance Day. Remembrance means a token, a souvenir. Again, the goddess Osiris is associated with the colour black, which is the underworld. We have certain significant numbers like Armistice Day, which ended on 11/11/11, which gives us 33, the 33 hertz of consciousness. We had D-Day that ended on the 6th hour, the 6th day of the 6th month, which gives us 666. It is 216 hertz, which is the frequency of man. If we do 6 times 6 times 6, it gives us 216, the number of the beast. Man is the beast. The Statue of Liberty is Isis, and it faces Paris, which means the Temple of Isis. The Flame of Nimrod in Babylonia is the sun god. In Babylonia, this would have been Semiramis, but it is Isis, just renamed. And then we get to American independence and why the 4th of July was specifically chosen. On the 4th of July, Sirius A is furthest away from the sun, it is out of sight, and the founding fathers wish to commemorate Sirius into their history. They signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. Philae is where the Temple of Isis is situated in Egypt, and Delphia comes from Delphos, which is the womb. It is the goddess of the womb, Isis. Even the American hot dog is Egyptian, not American. In what was called the Dog Days, the Egyptians used to sacrifice a dog to appease the heat in July and August. That is known as the hot dog. That is where the symbol of the hot dog comes from. It is the sacrifice of a dog to appease the heat of the sun. And then we look at certain brand names and logos, which is the Mini. Cerebellum means little brain. It is the mini brain. And those are the wings, the lateral wings of the cerebellum, the equilibrium. The black dot in the middle is the Egyptian equivalent of the bindi, which marks where the pineal gland is on the forehead. The whole concept of royalty comes from Egypt. And when we see this glorious throne, we can see the symbol of Horus at the back of the queen there. The pyramid with a circle in the middle is the symbol of Horus. When you get to the 3rd degree of Masonry, you can choose between the York Rite, which is Christianity, or the Scottish Rite, which is all things to do with Egypt. And it's called the Scottish Rite because Queen Menetemun, who was the daughter of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, basically came to the British Isles and named Scotland, the country Scotland. When we look at knighthoods, we're basically looking at the word Osiris, Sir. People become a Sir. That comes from Egypt and the god Osiris. The red carpet itself is symbolic of a bloodline of the elites. That is the linear line of genetic. Even Meghan Markle, who's now going to be marrying Prince Harry soon, had to take a blood test to make sure that she was eligible to be part of a royal genetic line, because they will always keep themselves to themselves. Meghan Markle is related to King John and Richard of Robin Hood fame, hence the reason that her first public appearance was in Nottingham. And when we look at the Oscar statue, which is a Knights Templar, the Knights Templars are the modern day Illuminati, and we can see the brotherhoods and the rituals and all that in the right hand corner. It's all to do with a closed family tree of brotherhoods. All American presidents, bar one, are related to the pharaohs of Egypt. They are all related to British royalty and European royalty. It all goes back to that family tree from the Egyptian pharaohs. I was saying to somebody earlier about where people have accused me of saying God doesn't exist and Christ doesn't exist. I've looked at the structure of the universe and how it's been made, how it's been created, and it is full of mathematics. It's all mathematical sequences that things will not deviate from, and that can only mean that there is a creator, there is a programmer of those mathematical numbers, and that is what God is. In relation to the Christ is each and every one of us, it is not an individual. So I'm not saying that Christ doesn't exist, I'm saying that he doesn't exist in the way in which we've all been taught. So there's lots and lots of earth grids upon which these sacred sites are all put on because of their energy harnesses. But Now I'm going to take you to the planet Mars. When we look at the planet Mars, there is a city called the Cydonian City, where it has been proven to have some kind of geometric purpose. It was put there by design, it's no accident. And there's some of the geometry. And Cydonia houses the famous face and also pyramids on planet Mars as well. So when we look at the famous face on Mars, and we look at its grid latitude, which is that long sequence of numbers, if we divide that by the square root of 2,160, which has significance in Stonehenge, it equals that long series of number. That gives the diameter and the location of Stonehenge on Earth. It is a cosmic sat-nav. So anybody who's on planet Mars, if they type in those numbers onto their sat-nav, they will exactly locate Stonehenge on Earth. If we get Stonehenge, the mathematics, the 360-degree circle divided by the megalithic yard, which is 2.72, it equals the radius and the location of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So again, within the digits and the mathematics of Stonehenge, it gives us the exact location of the pyramids of Egypt. That is, on the left is Wiltshire, Avebury in Wiltshire. On the right, it is Cydonian City on Mars. It is an exact map overlay. So whoever lives on there knew about that and vice versa. Again, Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, and on the right, on the Cydonian City on Mars, that is called the Altar of Witness. It's pretty similar. When we take the three-dimensional formation using double pi, it equals that long series of number. That long series of number, the 9929.184896, it equals an encoded grid latitude of the Cydonian City on Mars. So again, the pyramids of Egypt are telling you how to find Cydonian City on Mars. These civilizations on these two planets had some collaboration between them. And again, it is a cosmic sat-nav. If you understand divine mathematics, if you can navigate yourself to Cydonian City on Mars, you can then navigate yourself to all these famous monuments on Earth. It's all to do with grid references, it's all to do with mathematics. There's quite an obvious correlation between these two planets. Evidently, it may even be the same civilization that has lived among both of them, both Earth and Mars. And here's some famous pictures that have been taken on the surface of Mars. Again, we don't know if they're true, if they're real, but they're quite interesting nevertheless. This is meant to be the surface of Mars. And again, there's some kind of canal which would have at some point have housed water. There was once a civilization on Mars. Whether they're still there is unknown, but they certainly were there once. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to hide the truth from all of us. They're trying to divert us from the highway of truth, and they're sending us as many different places as they can. They're doing it through water, they're doing it through air, they're doing it through food. Anything that enters the body keeps it into a low vibrational ebb. And as Buddha said, three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And by talks like this, and by venues like this, and by radio stations that Neil does, the truth is starting to come out. More and more people are seeking the truth. These are some of the people responsible for keeping everyone in the dark, keeping humanity at least hundreds of thousands of years behind where it should be spiritually. You have the Rockefellers, the Kissingers, the ecclesiastical system, your presidents, your prime ministers. All of these people are keeping you in the dark. So thank you very much for listening. I know it's a lot to take in, there's lots of information there, but basically the ancient code is of our own self, of our own consciousness, and if we balance our opposites, we will reach that Christ consciousness that I've been talking about. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? We will totally baffled. Mic to mic. There we go.
Mic to mic.
Yeah. Just to ask about the Earth and the Moon. The Moon was brought in for the Earth, wasn't it, from another galaxy?
According to the likes of the Sumerian Scrolls and the translation of the Sumerian Scrolls, It's meant to have been the Anunnaki that brought the moon here from elsewhere.
From where, sorry?
Well, they said from somewhere else, somewhere else. My problem with that is based on science. That's not possible, because they said that when they got here, they found life on Earth, and from that life on Earth, they tinkered with genetics to create what we have now. The problem with that is without the moon, there is no life on Earth, because scientifically, the moon gives us the 4 seasons. It gives us that global temperature that sustains life. It gives us oceans that are liquid and not solid. So the fact that they said they brought the moon here with them, I have a problem with because of science. So that's what they say, but in my opinion, because the moon has the same chemical composition as the Earth, or at least the core of the Earth, it was created at the same time, it's the same age. My opinion on the creation of the universe is called a one-time beginning, which was an abstract concept in the mind of the creator. And that concept was manifest into physicality. And you have what's called the nodes of standing waves, where harmonics is introduced into the universe, and you have stars and planets that go an exact certain distance away from each other, and that comes into the theory of relativity, where everything is reliant upon everything else. So on that basis, the Earth and the Moon were created at the same time in that one-time beginning, which is known as the Big Bang Theory.
I thought what caused our seasons was the fact that the Earth was not at the correct angle that it should be.
Well, the Moon is a planetary stabiliser, and it actually locks the Earth into a 23.5 degree tilt. It's that 23.5 degree tilt that gives us the seasons.
Right, yeah.
So it's the Moon that's doing that. Yeah. But that tilt is also sustaining life. So without that tilt, there isn't life as we know it on Earth. And that's why I have a problem with the Moon being brought here if life was already here.
Do you agree that Saturn is linked with Satan, and how they're doing, this is just by the by, this is where there's information being sent from Saturn, bounced onto the Moon, and which is then bounced onto this planet, which is why they gave the Moon an orbit. That's why we will never see. I mean, if you do it with your own fist, one planet, it represents a planet, you'll see the back end of it. But because it's got an orbit, it stops us from seeing it. So it's all the satanistic stuff to keep us in the dark. It's being sent from Saturn, bounced off the Moon to us.
Well, Saturn is pinnacle in many of the Semitic religions, and Saturn is Darth Vader, means Dark Father, and that is Saturn. It's the Lord of the Rings. So Saturn is quite important in many of the world religions, but the corruptible energy of the planet Saturn gives us Satan, and all this black magic that rules the world comes from all this satanic worship. And with black magic, in order for it to work, we have to be told what's happening, but they're telling us through symbols and through logos. They're telling us what they're doing, but they're not telling us in plain English.
No, they're not.
But that is how their black magic works, by telling us what they're doing. Yeah. But they're telling us in a way that we have to work it out. So Saturn is very, very influential in a lot of the elites.
Yeah.
Sue, got a question.
What you said just recently about they're poisoning us, the air, the water, and all the rest of it. I recently saw a video the other day saying the same thing, but saying we know it's caused by inflammation, and if you can stop the inflammation in the body anywhere, you will live much, 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 much longer. And they know this, and then deliberately poison is keeping our consciousness down, keeping us aging, which actually we shouldn't age at all. You know, we can live hundreds of years, in theory.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting as well, and it just registered with what you just said about the poisoning of all basic things.
If you look at chemtrails in the air, which is a cluster of positive ions, which are basically bad for you because they cause lethargy and illness. If you look at microwave food, if you look at the likes of fluoride and all kinds of stuff in the water, if you look at there's certain vibrations to all four, smart meters. There's vibrations to all these foods, and some foods of high vibration are the organic ones that grow from the sun. The food-like things that we're eating is not food; it's of low vibration. So they're putting all this low vibration and GMOs inside the body, which have an effect on DNA, which have an effect on the relay systems and the communication systems of the body. So what they're doing is they're keeping us at such a low ebb that we're never going to raise ourselves high enough to be on their level to fight this. They're attacking us in all these different ways. because their vibration, they need to keep us low in order for them to control us.
I've been aware of this for years, and I've done my best to eat organic food, not have smart meters, and wear protective things around the neck to ward off the energies coming from the EMFs. There's just so much they want to get to you, isn't there?
Yeah, but look how hard they're trying, and yet, you know, we're testament to the fact that it's not working.
You mentioned their chemtrails. The thing I have the difficulty with that one is it's so indiscriminate. If there's something up in the atmosphere, you cannot control who's going to be affected by it. So I don't personally believe that chemtrails are out to get us, because if people that are putting them out there are living within us anyway, how are they going to protect themselves?
That's a good point. The thing with chemtrails, initially they denied them, and then they admitted to them, but they're telling us it's to stop global warming. The problem with chemtrails is, as I say, it's clusters of positive ions which cause illness. There's aluminium in there, and even Monsanto are trying to now create aluminium-resistant crops because there's aluminium in the air. So they are trying to counteract what's happening. But we are being attacked from all different levels. If the water doesn't get you, the chemtrails do. If that don't get you, the food will. They're concentrated effort on trying to keep you down.
Yeah, I mean, I do tend to believe that there's something that's we're ingesting, whether it be breathing, eating, drinking, or whatever. And then there's a bit of a conspiracy then that the medical pharmaceutical companies in cahoots with everyone, because they're going to benefit out of it, because you're going to go run into the GP to get some tablets to make you feel better when you've been poisoned with the stuff that's coming out of the air or whatever. So I kind of believe there's definitely something going on there, and that's a bit more, for me, that's a bit easier to kind of like relate to. Really. You can almost see the cause and effect of it. But some of these other things, I can't always relate to that.
If you look at the word pharmacy, it comes from pharmacia, and pharmacia was a water nymph that lived in the river of poison. So that's telling you something.
But there's something else going on here as well. They're very good at spreading fear. And if you're living in fear because you're scared of this, that and the other, that has a detrimental effect on yourself. I sometimes block off all this stuff. I've got a friend who's very conspiracy theorist. And all she ever does is talk about the black stuff, about the paedophilia and this, that and the other. I said, stop thinking about it, raise your vibrations up, just be positive, be happy, and don't dwell with it. I just shove it to one side, even with these chemtrails which we all say we can't avoid. So you lift your own vibrations and you can conquer that by your own will. I
think one thing we can't do is fight them, because their system is far bigger than we are as individuals.
I'm not fighting.
But what we can do is we can try and raise our vibrations so they can't touch us, because they operate here, and if we can operate there, they won't touch us. That's why they're trying to keep us here, because if we're there, we're out of reach. If they can keep the world here, they can control us, they can keep us in fear, they can keep everything under control. If we can do these kind of things that the ancients did and balance ourselves and raise ourselves, we are out of their park. And that's why you don't fight them, you try alternative ways. You know, if there's something trying to bite your feet, you try and jump a little bit higher, you know, and that's, you try to get out of the reach, and that's what we need to do. There's no point taking them on head on, because their system is bigger than we are. We won't. Not taking them on, because they have created this genius system over thousands of years. We're not going to come in and just take them all on, because they are ready to fight. If they can keep people down here, you know, the last place you want to meet a boxer is in a boxing ring, because that's where he fights. You want to keep out of the ring, you want to keep yourself above them.
Any more questions?
Just a quick question about the Bosnian pyramid. It emits ultrasound at 28,000 hertz. Have you got any idea what that's all about?
The honest answer, no. It will be something to do with consciousness again. It will be something to do with this chemical fire, this light, the biophotons of light. It's all to do with consciousness. The pyramid shape is a model of consciousness. So somewhere along the line, that frequency will relate to some kind of consciousness somewhere. But in terms of the Bosnian pyramids, I've never really looked into them in any great detail. But I'm quite sure that it will fit in with all the other pyramids all around the world.
Apparently at that frequency, you can lift very light balls, so it's like levitation. So that's the beginning frequency at that time of that.
Yeah, I think the stones of the pyramids were lifted by levitation, and modern day scientists in Switzerland are now starting to levitate things by sound. They're also creating laser beams by sound, which is why all these rocks and stones are perfect precision. You can't even get a piece of paper through them. It's all to do with sound. So frequency and harmonics, the universe, one verse, a metrical rhythm, everything is sound, all sound related in some way. So the sound of thunder gives us the light of lightning. It's the actual sound that creates the light of lightning. So in the same capacity, there will be something to do with consciousness and frequencies in the Bosnian pyramids, as is with all the others around the world.
Question I've got, well, two questions. One is to do what we've just been talking about, the sound, as a bit of an extension there, because in the Bible they talk about the walls of Jericho being brought down by the sound of trumpets, which sort of suggests to me you're talking about harmonics and sound building the pyramids. It almost sounds like they were using the same technology to also deconstruct buildings. I mean, would you agree with that, with the walls of Jericho kind of idea?
Sound, certainly the military and whatever, they're trying to devise weapons that will kill people by sound. So sound, at a frequency, sound is destructive. 432 hertz is a harmonious sound, which is what music used to be tuned to. Now it's tuned to 440 hertz, which is disharmonious, which harms the body. So all these people listen to bump, 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 bump. That is 440 hertz. So sound can also be detrimental as well as positive. And anything in duality can be positive or negative, it's just how you use it. And there are certain frequencies that are universally harmonious, and there are frequencies that are not. So at the wrong frequency, you can destruct. At the right frequency, you can lift.
As you can see it with the old adverts where they used to have an opera singer singing and the old glass used to break and stuff like that, yeah. And the other question was, when you had a picture of the Queen knighting someone, calling them Sir, but I've always had this theory about the Queen with knighting people and they bow their heads. What's your take on that particular symbology of the sword going on their shoulders and then bowing their heads?
It comes from the saying, this one's going to go over your head. So the sword going from shoulder to shoulder is going to go over your head. If you don't do the bidding of the establishment, it's going to go through your neck.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah.
So when you become a Sir, when you become a Knight of the Realm, you do the bidding of the establishment. Because if you don't,
yeah.
So
they found their head in submission, saying you can take my head off if you have to. I pledge my whatever to.
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah, that's what.
So it comes from the saying, this one's going to go over your head.
Yeah.
Because next one ain't.
Yeah.
So do as we tell you.
So people like John Lennon who refused to be knighted and things like that, they were really rubbing the establishment up the wrong way, essentially.
They were upsetting them to the point they were assassinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not all of them. But they even try and assassinate your character, or they try and assassinate you. John Lennon was too influential in a negative way for them. So that's what happened to him. He had to go. He was being watched by the CIA, and Elvis had a lot to do with that, because he dealt with the CIA. Elvis was an asset of the CIA, and he was quite fearful of the popularity of the Beatles in America, which was taking limelight off him. So the CIA were watching John Lennon. So it's no surprise that he was suicided.
Yeah.
Really.
Why is there so much Satanism amongst the media and all the singers and like selling their souls to the devil and all that stuff?
Because they believe by selling the soul, they're actually giving themselves this celebrity status, that they're basically exchanging that for materialism.
Really very low vibrational.
Yeah.
If they go to that way.
I mean, the media, the newspapers of London, of the UK, are based in Fleet Street, and Fleet means under the same control. So they're all part of it.
I know this question is going to be a very, very long answer, but in summary, how have you managed to get this information, and what's your source and things like that? Right.
There's many. For me personally, I believe the information has been given to me from when you get your brain to 8 hertz, it synchronises the two hemispheres of the brain. At that point, it also puts you in sync with universal knowledge. So if you imagine it in computer terms, where you can just go on the internet and do a search and you can find things, that is how it happens to me in a lot of ways. I can be sitting there and think, I can actually physically feel information being implanted in my head. I can tell you the exact point that happened. From that point, it's almost like a seed has been grown. It then develops into a what if. It then develops into a guided research. It then develops into that piece fits nicely with that piece, and that piece fits nicely with that piece. And I termed it earlier, in computer terms, the establishment have fragged this information. They've put it in so many different places that people can get one or two pieces, but they'll never get the whole picture. What I've been able to do with help is to defrag it all and bring you back to a centralised place. So the whole picture is quite obvious. But I think that with the synchronisations of what have happened, we've been given the golden key, we've been given this mysterious message in 2010. By seeing all these things that I've seen since 2009, and the things that I've seen have happened so quick, relatively so quick, all at once. There has to be something guiding that. There has to be some power behind that. And I think a lot of it is come to me because I'm able to piece it together. I mean, I did 17 years of evidence gathering. I did 17 years of piecing evidence together and making up a picture of what happens. And evidence speaks louder than witnesses. So how it happens for me, that's how it happens for me. I seem to tune into the general information and bring it down into one place.
And how do you get into the 8 hertz state of mind then?
By balance, by certain frequencies.
What, on meditation or?
You can do it by meditation, or you can find true frequencies on the internet, and you can do that. The Egyptians did it by resonant chambers, like the King's Chamber, which resonates at 8 hertz. So their harmonics, when they sang or chanted or played instruments in that chamber, because it was tuned to that frequency, that's the frequency that will come back to them. So they did it by harmonics and sort of the balancing of chakras and the balancing of their being, their body. So there are ways in which you can do that to elevate yourself to that level.
I also heard there's a gadget that actually changes the music you're listening to into the 432. Is that true?
Yes.
How do you get that gadget?
You can actually get them off the internet. You can actually get a mechanical tuner, and musicians use it as well. So you can actually tune things to that frequency.
I've got a tuning fork at home that I got £15, I think it cost, from one of the speakers of the Pro.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do with it because I don't play an instrument.
This is more of a tuning box. It's like a digital electronic thing that can actually tune frequencies to that frequency. But you can actually get them to convert it to that frequency.
So you can put it to your speaker or whatever, and it will change the frequency of what you're listening to.
Sometimes I haven't actually got one, but there are tuners that you can tune to a certain frequency. So yeah.
Who's controlling the Egyptians with the release of information? The Egyptians or America or of UK or French or whoever?
It is that the likes of the Pharisees and the Gnostics and whatever who at some point decided that actually we want to keep this information to ourselves because it's giving us power over everybody else, and everybody else can have this, which is your biblical scriptures, your this, that, and the other. So it's the Illuminati, the Pharisees, the Zionists, the champions of the New World Order that are keeping humanity in the dark while they're having all these secret initiations and whatever to themselves. So a lot of this comes from the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, where they taught chosen initiates this kind of information. But they always see knowledge as being a privilege and not a right. So if you were worthy to receive this information by whatever, by bloodline or by action, you were taken into the mystery schools and you were taught the correct ways. If you were not a chosen initiative, you can believe, whatever you want to believe. You can believe what Islam tells you, or Judaism tells you, or Christianity tells you, but you're not going to get the truth because the truth is behind closed doors. Yeah. So that is where it's all coming from.
Do you think that level of control has gone unbroken back through the centuries to Egypt?
A lot of things come from Egypt because that was a real advanced culture. There's certain schisms within these elite, and elite just means God's chosen ones, and they believe themselves to be God's chosen ones. But there are schisms within them. There are power crazy people that want dominance, but there's also other power crazy people who also want dominance. And you have sun cults, moon cults, this cult, that cult. You have all these different schisms that sometimes go head to head. But the majority of these brotherhoods, these ecclesiastical brotherhoods, retain this information for themselves, and it's all done behind closed doors. It goes back to Egypt. Sometimes it may even go beyond Egypt. But all these different cultures have the same characters, have the same message, but under different names. So in Babylon you'll have Nimrod and Semiramis. In Egypt you'll have Isis and Horus. It's all the same characters, it's all the same symbolic meaning. But they've hidden it. They've hidden it so well that most people are never going to work this out. So a lot of it does stem from Egypt. Modern day society, the power of America, the UK Parliament and all that, Thames, all this London and American symbolism comes from Egypt. It's a powerful land, but the consciousness rising of humanity will come from the re-emergence of Egyptian knowledge. And a lot of this information is the Egyptian knowledge, which is telling you about the balance of yourself. And if you can balance yourself, you will escape that low vibration. And that's why they're trying to keep you where they can control you.
Right, any more questions? We're all done. I think we're all done. Okay, well thank you very, very, very much to Michael for that brilliant presentation. There's such a lot of information to take through. But luckily, just by pure chance, I videoed it. So when I set up the PayPal account, you can start watching it. It'll be on YouTube probably in a few weeks' time. So we'll hopefully you can go back and take notes, and perhaps any stuff you've missed you can take in there. But Michael's also got another book coming out. Is it out now?
No, it's probably going to be the next 3 weeks or so.
Next 3 weeks. So if you're interested to know more, he's got the Serpent, the Ancient Code of Serpent Fire, coming out in a few weeks' time. He's also got some earlier books he's got here. If anyone's interested to know more, you can put your name on a list, and he can email you information as well. You can visit his website for further information. This one here, but again, that'll be on the video once it's done. So we'll say show Michael our appreciation for coming all the way down from Staffordshire today to do a great presentation. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. There's his website, michaelfeeley.com, and you can email Michael as well, or you can find him on Facebook as Michael Feeley as well.